So in this video, we're going to cover all the different settings that can be accessed and changed on the ViewBoard. So it's going to be a little bit of a long one. If you kind of need the high-level overview getting started, be sure to go check out that video because we're going to spend some time on this one. So the first thing is that on the home screen, there's a lot of things that you can kind of change, edit, access. So clicking date time takes you to date time settings. Clicking on Wi-Fi down here takes you to Wi-Fi settings. Again, we cover that in the overview. But you can actually rename some of this stuff. So like where it says ViewBoard, if you just do a long press, you can see here that it opens up this message thing, and you can change the title and even the subtitle. You can also set a password on that, so if you don't want people to mess with it later, you can. Just don't forget that password and then click confirm to change any of those settings. Now, the other thing that you can do from here is you can rearrange these app icons and stuff. So for example, you can't tell, but there's actually a little area over here to the right that allows you to place icons. So for example, if we expand the menu here and we wanted to add, for example, the manager icon, touch and hold, just kind of like on your phone, and then drag, and you can actually place it over in this area. Now it's a little hard to see, but there's a silhouette of this icon, and if I release, that will leave that icon in that specific spot. Now if you want to remove that icon, same thing, touch and hold, and then drag it up to the trash can at the top. There's a remove option there. In terms of apps and icons and rearranging, you could also rearrange this top shelf area. So you can see here, if I touch this display, touch and hold, I can drag it down here to the trash can to remove. That frees up an extra spot. So if I want to add WPS Office, I can touch and drag, and then I can add it into that specific spot. Note that you can only keep 4 apps up there in that particular area. All of your inputs that have active connections will be displayed down here at the bottom. So HDMI 1 is just an external laptop we have connected, and then if you're a Windows district and you have one of the built-in PCs, that is what is showing there. It has the VPC built in. Now from here, to get to the rest of the settings for the board, touch the down arrow, find the settings icon, click on that. Wireless and network, obviously Wi-Fi settings are here. If you need to add or remove networks, you can do it from here. Or if you're running like a hardwired connection, you can disable the Wi-Fi here by just turning it off. Anytime you need to go back, you can always touch that back button, or you can use the little back button that's a physical button on the front of the panel. Ethernet lets you change the different settings for your network if you need to do any of those. This does have a wireless hotspot ability. We don't necessarily need to go into that, but Bluetooth could be important if you're using Bluetooth keyboards or something like that with the panel. You might want to connect those through there. Under the share menu, this just shares Linux files, some Samba stuff, nothing too important there. But display, as mentioned in our kind of quick getting started guide, the wallpaper can be changed here, so you can do solid images pre-built, live, which are animated wallpapers, or if you want to upload your own, you can go to that My Photo section and then upload it from a flash drive. To set the light wallpaper, just select it, choose Set as Wallpaper. You'll get the notification that it's been applied. And then if you want to check it out, just touch the home button, and we can see here that we've changed the background of this. Go back to settings here. HDMI out is a setting where on the side panel, there's an HDMI out port. You can daisy chain whatever's being displayed on the panel will then display on whatever you have connected. If you want to change that resolution, you can go into those settings to change what the output resolution is. Next is preference. This is where most of the settings that you'll want to adjust are going to be, such as touch sounds. You can change some of those that are under touch. Preferred language if you need to adjust that. And then it's kind of same with keyboard if you want to change the keyboard to like say a split screen keyboard, or if you want to change the language of your default keyboard. Date and time, as mentioned before, is here. So going into date time settings, the big things here are just making sure that your time zone is accurate and that it's set to automatic date and time. Next is boot mode. So this is a kind of an advanced setting. I'm not going to go too much into this, but if you want to change some of the boot settings, go in here. Now, when you go into what are considered some more, I guess, high advanced settings that could maybe change the performance of the board. It will ask you if you want to set a password. Kind of like before, just be cautious setting passwords, make sure you can remember it, but this would just prevent anyone from making those specific changes. Now, startup and shutdown, from here, there's lots of different options you can do. So for example, a startup input can be configured. So when the board turns on, you can make it boot into a specific input. This can be helpful, especially if you have an attached device that always needs to switch to, or for example, if teachers should always be on HDMI 1. So you can say default startup, and then from the list, you can choose, if you're a Windows district and you have that built-in PC, you can do that. You can also choose different HDMIs. So if you had a Chromebox that was connected on HDMI 1, you can select HDMI 1 as the default boot input. Now, the display setting when there's no signal, essentially what this is that if there's no signal, you have two choices. After a little bit, you can power off the display. So if there's no signal, it's just going to shut down, right? It's just going to turn it off, save some energy. Or you can have it just turn off the backlight, right? So the board's still on, it's still running, it's just going to turn off the screen. So you can choose either one of those settings. Standby mode is hibernate or sleep. Typically I leave it on hibernate, but basically you can read the description there yourself and decide which option works best for you. Energy Star mode we also covered in our overview. I recommend having Energy Star mode turned off. And then you can also set this setting. So if you want it to be a black screen or blank screen after startup, you can enable that. And then there's also the ability to add like a power schedule. So if you want to add specific scheduling for the panel to turn on and turn off, you can configure all that here. Toolbar settings. So on the side of the panel, you'll notice that there's these little arrows that are sticking out. They kind of look like a little bubble. These are called the sidebar or overlay tools. If you touch those, this little menu pops up. Basically, these buttons allow you to navigate on the embedded player. So like if I touch that home button, it takes me back to the home screen, or that's the back button if I want to go back a screen. We have videos that kind of cover what all these different tools are. Usually the overlay tools are used with different devices that don't have their own annotation kind of tools built in. So for example, if a teacher has like a VCR connected, for example, they could use the overlay tools with it. If you're a Windows user, you're probably not going to use the overlay tools because most of those tools are on the Windows device itself. However, these overlay tools can be enabled, disabled, hidden, all that kind of stuff by choosing the toolbar settings. So you can see here that I can hide this in all the different inputs. So it's basically available or not available. So if that's something you want disabled on your panels, if you choose hide, you can see here that they're now gone and they don't show up. And if I click available, then they show up again. These can accidentally be hidden as well. So you'll see down here, there's 3 dots. This is kind of like an additional settings button. And then there's this arrow that's pointing to the side. What that does is it hides it, and then it gives you this little notification that says swipe to reveal. So what this does is it just enables that setting there, right? So they're still there, they're just hidden. So if you swipe off the side, then that little arrow will appear. So just if they're ever hidden or you're confused about the side toolbar, just check this setting, make it available, or you can hide it. Let's go to input source. So you can rename the input sources. This can be helpful if you're using connected devices such as like a Chromebox and you want to rename HDMI 1 to Chromebox. You can select that, retype it, and then when you go to the input menu, so we'll go ahead and rename this one here. We'll call it Chromebox. Make sure that updated. There we go. So you can see it says Chromebox now. If I want to switch inputs, I can switch inputs by touching the settings button here. And you'll notice now my, instead of saying HDMI 1 on my list, it now says Chromebox. So it's just a little bit easier for users to identify how to switch inputs or what they're accessing. So those can all be renamed. You can also go to the source settings. So this is something that happens with You know, when you connect a HDMI device to a TV or a panel, you'll notice a lot of times it automatically switches the input to that specific device that was connected. That's basically the same thing here. So you'll see here, input port auto switch. You can do that signal auto search, some of those different settings. And then again, here's that energy saving. So if there's no input, how long until the panel goes off? This can be configured from as quick as 1 minute up to 60 minutes, or you can just turn it off, in which case the panel would stay on the whole time, even if there's no signal connected to it. The app just allows you to go in and configure those apps, change permissions, clear cache data. Probably won't spend too much time in that. It's basically the same kind of menu functionality that you would get on an Android device. Then finally, system. Here you can see storage information, kind of drill down and figure out what storage is being used on the panel. Clone to USB we covered earlier, so if you configure all these settings and you want to clone them to a USB and then reclone to other panels, go check our settings overview video. We talk about that in there. You can set display ID, change security certificates. The biggest one here is this system update. Now, the system firmware by default, you can see here, is set to auto update. And auto update just means it's going to constantly check. You can manually check. You'll see that there's a check now button. So if I actually check now, I can do that. Or if you have new firmware on a USB stick, you can actually browse local storage if you put in that USB stick. Now, there's something important about automatic updates. There are certain ports, certain URLs that need to be whitelisted sometimes in order for the panel to be able to check for updates. So just because I touch check now and it says it's up to date, may or may not be true if you haven't whitelisted the specific websites, ports, and things that need to for these view boards to work. So go check the onboarding guide. There's information in there about what ports need to be configured. If there is a firmware update, you'll get notified. Just accept. That'll go ahead and install. Remember, anytime you're installing firmware that is going onto the system, don't unplug it or lose power or anything like that. It could potentially mess up the device. So that's our settings overview. I know it's really long, but we covered everything. If you wanted the short and easy version, how to clone it, move it to other panels, go back, check out the overview settings video. That'll take care of that for you.